Remember Morgan McSweeney? We talked about him earlier. Starmer's chief of staff and the man who orchestrated his rise to power just days before the digital ID announcement. McSweeney was embroiled in a donations scandal that should have every Labour supporter asking serious questions about transparency and accountability. How many of you heard about the McSweeney scandal? I'm sure most of you guys have, but nobody's talking about it anymore. The police even put it back to the Electoral Reform Committee and they said no further action. Between 2017 and 2020, when McSweeney was running Labour Together, the think tank that essentially functioned as Starmer's shadow operation, they failed to declare over £700,000 in donations. That's not a fucking accounting error or an admin blip. That's serious money. And that should have been declared under electoral law. There's even an email from his lawyer to McSweeney saying, I think you're going to have to try and pass this off as an admin error. That's not an admin error. That's fucking worse than Father Ted. At least the money was only resting in his account.
First of all, that money was just resting in my account before I moved it on.
It was resting for a long time, Ted.
Yes, but
a good long rest.
Look, Dougal, we're not talking about me.
The Electoral Commission fined Labour £14,250, oh whoopee do, for more than 20 breaches of electoral law. 20 breaches. And the smoking gun, as I said, leaked emails from 2021 show Labour's lawyer Gerald Shumash advised McSweeney to describe this massive, and I think I'm going to use the word fraud here, this massive fraud as an admin error. Let me read exactly what Shumash wrote to McSweeney. There's no easy way to explain how Labour Together finds itself in this situation, and that it's perhaps best if the problem was put down to an admin error. This is not an honest mistake. This is deliberate concealment being rebranded as incompetence. And it's far from it. It's a deliberate action. It's fucking fraud. And the police should be taking action on this. This should be going to the Criminal Prosecution Service, not the Electoral Commission. Completely, utterly out of order. And again, points to two-tier policing, doesn't it? It is well dodgy. Remember, and this just wasn't any donation period. £100,000 was gifted to Labour Together while McSweeney was simultaneously running Starmer's leadership campaign in 2020. That's a massive conflict of interest that was deliberately hidden from public view. These guys are rotten to the fucking hilt. The Conservative Party obtained these leaked emails and called for a new investigation. Conservative Chairman Colin Hollenrake said the emails showed McSweeney had deceived the Electoral Commission and described it as an industrial-scale cover-up of a slush fund used to install Keir Starmer as Labour leader, and he's right. Now, don't get me wrong, the fucking Tories are just as bad because they're all at it. I don't care. These guys are in government. They need to be clean, and they're not. They are dirty as fuck. But, just as the story was gaining traction, Electoral Commission announced that they wouldn't reopen the investigation, claiming they found no evidence of any other potential offences, just as the dead cat hit the table. Convenient timing, wouldn't you say? How many people have spoke about this fraud? How many people have spoke about this fraud after digital ID was announced? No one. No one. Classic dead cat. Textbook crisis management. When you've got a story that threatens the credibility of the Prime Minister's most trusted advisor, the man who masterminded his leadership victory using potentially improperly funded operations, you throw the biggest dead cat you can find onto the table. And that's what this scandal represents. McSweeney ran a think tank that operated like a political slush fund, taking hundreds of thousands in donations without proper declaration, all while positioning Starmer for power and himself as his right-hand man. That same McSweeney, now Starmer's chief of staff, making decisions about digital ID implementation and government contracts worth millions, if not billions, of pounds. Labour Together wasn't just any think tank, it was the organisation that developed the brick card proposal that became the foundation for Starmer's digital ID policy. So the same organisation that failed to properly declare £700,000 in donations is now the intellectual architect of a surveillance system that will track every citizen's employment, housing and service access. How can you possibly trust these people? They are corrupt and they are evil. This was pointed out by the Conservatives, that this represents clear evidence of McSweeney's industrial scale cover-up and that the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff still has very serious questions to answer. But instead of facing those questions, we get this nonsense strategy. These guys need to go. They're out of control. Completely out of control. And this seems to be how modern political management works, isn't it? You don't address scandals, you bury them under bigger, more controversial announcements that dominate the news cycle. The digital ID announcement serves multiple purposes. It makes Starmer look tough on immigration. If you can make a fucking wet bit of lettuce look tough. It changes the conversation away from McSweeney's donations scandal. And it sets up the corporate cronyism for £1 billion paydays. They are ripping the pish out of us. They really are. Every minute of every day. I'm a little annoyed because it's so freaking blatant, isn't it? Is it not? Can you see it? Yes, these people would be in power, whatever government was in power, and that's why I have continually banged on for the last 5 years, Adam, that it's not the party that needs to change, it's the system. The whole rotten lot needs ripped out and replaced. This whole thing stinks of the kind of machine politics that Tony Blair perfected, the fucking evil architect himself. Create powerful, well-funded organisations that operate in the shadows. We have penetrated the cabinet. Use them to consolidate power, then reward the same people with government positions on lucrative contracts. McSweeney goes from running a dodgy think tank to being chief of staff, while companies connected to the Blair network, like his son Ewan, Multiverse, position themselves to profit massively from the policies that the same think tank developed. No conflict of interest here. No nepotism. No two-tier business going on at all. It's not governance. It's a protection racket dressed up as public policy. It's completely out of order. And then, just to put the icing on the cake, let's talk about the technical side of the impending disaster that's waiting to happen. The government digital ID service recently lost its certification for the existing one login system after the supplier, iProve, allowed their certification to lapse. This indicates potential implementation risks and the need for robust supplier management. Security concerns have already emerged with reports of high level of risk assessments for government digital identity systems. Government is evil and corrupt. If hackers can get into the systems run by Marks and Spencer and Jaguar Land Rover, they can get into a national ID card system. And once they're in it, there will be a wealth of information required to steal anyone's identity, all in one place. So who wins from all this? Who really wins? The tech companies, obviously, iProve, Accenture, Deloitte, Experian, hundreds of millions in contracts. Training company, Multiverse, Ewan Blair's company, potentially over $1 billion in training contracts. The surveillance state, unprecedented, unheard of tracking capabilities. The stuff of science fiction. Political cover. Starmer gets to look tough on immigration. Who loses? Who always loses? You lose. You lose your privacy, your freedom, and your choice. The estimated 140 to 400 million development cost understates the total market opportunity here, which includes ongoing maintenance, updates, and integration with existing systems. The technology sector, this represents a significant growth opportunity in a market already generating nearly $1 billion gross annually. I mean, It doesn't, you don't need to be a cop for 20 years and work with the police for a further 9 to know when something stinks. And this whole scheme stinks to high heaven, like a dead cat that's been left out in the summer sun. It reeks of political desperation, corporate cronyism and authoritarian overreach. Several liberties groups have noted the mandatory digital ID is highly unlikely to achieve the government's objective of tackling unauthorised immigration. It's not fucking intended to do anything of the sort, is it? Instead, it represents a technological solution to a political problem, offering the appearance of decisive action while potentially creating new surveillance infrastructure that extends far beyond immigration control. And remember, this is one of the most surveilled countries in the world. You link up a digital ID and facial recognition system, and boy, you guys won't be able to go for a dump without permission. So the fight's not over, it is just beginning. But the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, and right now we need to be more vigilant than ever. Because no doubt these guys will try every stupid, horrible, fucking low-life scheme and trick that they can to try and get this in. And the icing on the cake is that studies have shown that the people most likely to be adversely affected by this are people of colour and in ethnic communities. So this strategy is never going to fucking fly, is it? Never. Right, there you go.